and welcome to the first in a series of Seekers School webinars. In this series, Seekers Media will be covering off a variety of different social media marketing and digital storytelling topics. I'm honored to be the first person today to talk through one of these topics. My name is Amber Turno. I'm head of digital marketing at Substrate Studios, and we're a Squamish-based consultancy focused on social media, digital marketing, and graphic design. I work a lot with Seekers Media with a variety of partners in helping craft their social media strategies and optimize and evolve their social media campaigns. So today, I'd like to take you through making the most out of Facebook marketing. So let's get started. The learning objectives for this session are understanding Facebook as a media platform, building a content framework that aligns with your business goals, packaging your content for optimal performance, creating a solid distribution strategy, developing a measurement scorecard, and an introduction to Facebook advertising. So how has Facebook evolved over the last 10+ years? Well, the key message here is that it's evolved from a social network designed to connect college students to one another to a powerful media platform. Now more than ever, people use Facebook for many different purposes. It's a walled ecosystem that keeps people on the platform and learns a lot about them too. People now use Facebook not just to connect with their friends and loved ones, but also to get recommendations on restaurants, businesses, purchases, travel. They use it to remind them of memories and share their memories. They use it to private message, connect to brands, connect to world events, and learn more about things that matter most to them. Ultimately, Facebook has collected the most extensive data set ever assembled on human social behavior. And while that might seem a little bit creepy to the average user, it's a playground for marketers. That means we can be more targeted and resonate more in terms of our campaigns and our marketing strategies. And that's a good thing overall, because if you're a Facebook user, you want to receive content that's relevant to you and not things that don't make any sense. So the stats are staggering. Facebook has 1.7 billion users, which is now the largest country in the world. Users spend an average of 20 minutes per day on the platform. 100 million hours of video and 350 million photos are uploaded daily, and nearly half log in from mobile. And that will continue to go up as more and more people are using mobile more exclusively, although there'll still be a portion of desktop users due to those people that tune in from work. Facebook is headed in 2017 in a number of different directions, and a lot of this is picking up off of trends from 2016. First and foremost, organic reach is officially history. And this is something we've been talking about or fearing, if you're a marketer, for a number of years now. We started off with being able to reach about 17% of our fan base if we had a business page with organic reach. And now that's down to 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky, 2%. So it really is a pay-to-play platform. Facebook themselves say that this is a media platform, not a social network anymore, and you really do need a budget if you're a business and you're trying to reach people with your content. Video continues to reign. It is definitely the time of the video. Quality over quantity, of course, but there's definitely amazing opportunities if you're a marketer trying to use video content. Facebook's announcement of Facebook Live, a live streaming video functionality last year, was really one of the latest things that they've done. But they've also made a lot of tweaks to the advertising structure around video, including most recently allowing or announcing that they were going to allow in-video advertising. Messenger is a feature that's been around since almost the beginning of Facebook, and at the time it was really more just a bonus feature for people to have conversations they didn't want private. But over time, a lot of these dark social conversations, untrackable conversations, are about brands, and Facebook is starting to see how they can monetize that by providing potential metrics or insights or marketing opportunities in the private space of conversations. And then stemming from Messenger is also the year of chatbots. So these are automated artificial intelligence programs that allow sort of a streamlined approach to conversation. So an example might be if you are a customer and you want to connect with your favorite brand about customer service issues or problems with your account, you can private message them, and the chatbot will be able to go through a simulation or a number of different scenarios until they help you find the right answer. And the second opportunity would be around retail. So if you're a purchaser, you have 4 or 5 different products that you're considering, and you want to get some advice from the brand about what's the best fit for you, you could private message them, and a chatbot could reply with different responses and potentially even help you facilitate a purchase within the Messenger app. So as you can see, great opportunities for streamlining resources and some interesting ways to provide sort of quicker customer service, because humans are only human, they can only do so much, but robots and artificial intelligence, the sky is the limit. So interesting to see where that goes this coming year. And finally, replacing Google as a top referral source. So that was a trend that actually started in 2015 with a lot of digital web publishing, or basically media, online media. And Google's really starting to play catch up here. So we're going to see this really accelerate in 2017, and brands really starting to potentially take investment away from Google and put it into Facebook. So now that we understand the landscape, how do we build a content framework that helps us build and develop storytelling and that resonates with our audience? The ingredients to your strategy are these 4 items. First and foremost, you have to understand your business objectives. Where does your business or company that you work for want to go in the next short and long-term time frames? Also, the messaging pillars. What makes your company special? How do you stand out from the crowd? And what are the key messages that you want to get across? What is your audience? So it could be multiple customer segments. It could be just one mass segment. But the more you know about your audience, the better. And finally, data and insights. So whether that's historical performance on your Facebook page, whether that's website traffic insights, whether that's information from research, or your consumer relationship management system where you're able to drill down a little bit more into who your customers are, the better strategies definitely have data associated. So the more you know, the more you can inform your decisions. So let's drill down for a second into audience. So what actually would it be nice to know about the people that you're reaching on Facebook? Well, your psychographic profiles, what makes them tick? The motivations, life stages and milestones. Are they a boomer? Are they a millennial? Are they a new parent or someone who's just been engaged? And finally, interests and passions. Where do they spend their time? What resonates the most with them? What are their hobbies? All of these things can be really, really helpful to ensure that you frame up content in a way that makes the most sense to your current and existing customers. So a lot of times in organizations, large and small, social media tends to work in a silo. The social media manager may have other roles within the company, and this is something they do off the side of their desk. Or if we're lucky enough to have a team or an individual dedicated to social, sometimes they don't get included in big business decisions or in the marketing strategies or public relations strategies. And so oftentimes they can feel a little bit alone or isolated, and the content that comes out is potentially disconnected or disjointed from the rest of the company. So really, it's the way to ladder social back into the bigger business objectives is to understand what they are and then how you can sort of package and frame them up in a way that's digestible for the social audience. That can start with a halfway point, which is the marketing communication strategy. So what are the key messages? What are the different touch points that the messaging is going out on? And then from there, you can take that and turn it into more digestible conversational messaging, storytelling, content series, etc. That is social media. So one of the benefits of social is that you can have a two-way conversation with people, whereas a lot of other marketing touch points you can't. With TV or print ads or even display ads, you can't have that two-way conversation. So this gives more depth to your storytelling and allows you to really have that call and response with the people that matter most to your business. So here's a content framework that I find really helpful in which to build your content from. So first and foremost, you want to start with a business priority, whatever that might be. And then you want to develop a few key messages that help you articulate in layman's terms what makes you stand out, what makes you differentiate from your competition, or some of the key benefits for customers to achieve that business priority. Then from there, you get into a more tactical layer, the content pillar. So these are basically themes of content that you can sprinkle into your editorial calendar that distill down that business priority or your key messages into digestible themes that give you some focus. And then finally, at the very most executional stage, the topics, which is the subject matter. What are you actually going to talk about to support your content buckets? So an example might be if your business priority is to build awareness about your brand. You want people to know about who you are, what you do, and maybe some of the new products that you have. Your key messages might be that who you are is someone who's been in business for 25 years, and you actually offer some unique products that are something that other operators in your field do not offer. So those are your differentiating messages. And then your content pillars might look like, because you've been in business for 25 years, you want to create a content pillar that's based around education and bringing people up to speed on topics that matter. So if you're a tour operator that takes people to the glacier, an education layer around your experience with glaciers, the scientific elements of it, and the knowledge that the guides bring to the table. Another example of that might be if you're talking about unique experiences, having to create a content bucket that's focused on the experiences themselves. What is it like to the customer from the inside out? And then if you get down to subject matter, that might look like your educational content pillar becomes did you knows and how-tos, subject matter. Your experiences become tips from the field, guides being able to provide real-time updates from the field where they're at standing at the glacier. So that's just a way to sort of articulate how to sort of break down as you're starting to build your content strategy. Now let's talk about your content mix. So we've got our evergreen content as the starting point, which is your timeless and long-lasting content. These are things that don't have time constraints to them. It's content that you can pull out again, time and time again, because you know it resonates, you know it's relevant, and it works. It could be educational pieces. It could be other things that communicate your core pillars as a brand. Then you also have seasonal or campaign content. This is time dependent. This is pulsing in and out of market potentially, and for sure has an expiry date. It's the hero moment. You also have user-generated content. So this is really driven by the community. It's your chance to have conversations with people who are experiencing your products or services, and it's something that does take time to foster and nurture and sustain, but it is a great way to have that two-way dialogue and also to reduce the amount of resources it takes to build content because people are helping to do that for you. And finally, short lead content. So this is really something you can't depend on. It's real time and trending, and it's something you can plan for, but not necessarily know what you're going to get until you get it. So now that we understand our content framework and ultimately our content mix, let's talk about planning. So first and foremost, let's set the foundation for our structure. We want to layer in our seasonal and our campaign big rocks so that we can really make sure we're not losing sight of those really important hubs or times of year that really matter most to us. Then we'll layer in evergreen to fill in the gaps. These are things that might have a little bit less weight behind them, but are still very important in order to communicate your differentiation as a product or to communicate the value proposition for your customers. And then we sprinkle in user-generated content, which you need to first fuel and then find, and then short lead content, which is really, again, something you can't depend on, but it's like a cherry on top of your sundae. So this is what a content plan might look like in action. So we have our content pillars, which in this case, for this example, are events, lifestyle, and people. We have our topics, which are family and culinary events, shopping and dining lifestyle, and featured customers and team members for people. And then we have our content types. So that's short lead, user-generated, campaigns, and evergreen. If you look at that in action, you'll see that in our content calendar for January and February, we have a healthy balance of our 3 content pillars, and our topics are covered off quite well as well. And then finally, we've mixed in short lead, user-generated, campaigns, and evergreen to cover all of our bases. So in essence, this is a very just distilled down version, but it just gives you a sense of how to make sure that you have that balance in your storytelling to make sure you're not losing sight of your business goals and everything that you produce is intentional and planned out. That's not to say that there's not room for being nimble, because every plan can be broken if things aren't working, but you want to set the tone and give yourself a framework to start with. So now that we have a really rock solid editorial calendar and content plan, how do we optimize and distribute our content? To take it from idea to execution, here's the key steps that you want to follow. First, we want our content plan, so we can check that off the list. We've got that, and we've got a really good, rock solid idea of what we want to do. Now, how do we do it? First, we want to start with our post objective. What is it that we want to do? We want to have a strong call to action. We want to have a good creative, distribution plan, and an optimization plan. So let's start by asking ourselves what we want our audience to think, feel, and do. This is really important because we need to put ourselves in the customer's shoes to ensure that they understand what it is we're asking of them. And if they understand it, or if we understand it, we'll be able to develop content that they will get. So an example would be, we want them to think about our product or service differentiation. We want them to think that we're the best at what we do. We want them to feel an emotional connection with us. And then we want them to go to our website to learn more about this certain tour or product that we have. Next, we want to understand what we want our content to achieve. Do we want it to drive website traffic? Do we want it to build brand awareness, inspire advocacy, start a conversation, or sell something? Once you can answer this question, the rest of the pieces will fall into place. So let's talk about the types of posts, because this is really how you package up your content for optimization. So these are just a sample of some of the key post formats that you can look for on Facebook in terms of marketing and advertising. So if you want your post to drive to your website, there's the good old traditional call to action link. You've probably seen this in your newsfeed. You can see here that the post copy actually has a link in it, so to add a bit more clickability. And then you also have the sort of clickable real estate, which is the photo, as well as the title and the Learn More button at the bottom right. That Learn More button is called the Call to Action button, and it can be customized. There's a few options like shop now, download this, read more. So there's something for every sort of action that customers could take. On the right-hand side is regular and 360 video. So really interesting new evolution in 360 in the last year, and lots of brands are doing it. And if you have a really unique service or offering, there's no better way to put customers in the shoes than to get them to take a 360 tour. The only challenge with video is that it really should be quality over quantity, and it should have a certain level of production value. So because there's so much content in social, it's really important that you have that production value now. So continuing our types of posts, we have static and 360 photo. So again, 360 photo takes much less production value. You can take a panorama with a cell phone now and then add it in as a 360. But just make sure that you have good quality, in focus, good lighting, and a great subject matter in order to make that happen. But, you know, nothing beats an old traditional, photo. And as long as there's good positioning and framing and subject matter and coloring in the photo, you're definitely still going to have it perform your objectives. And you can even see here that this one was a user-generated piece, so it's a great way to highlight your customers and their experience with you. On the right-hand side is the carousel. So this allows you to take sequential, multiple different versions or a story or different experiences and add them into a series of photos. So these are also clickable. Each individual photo is clickable. And so technically you could drive to different links if you wanted to. Not really as great at driving website traffic in my experience, but definitely great at combining that storytelling with a more softer call to action of going to a web property or a mobile property. And finally, one of my favorites is the Canvas ad. This is an immersive ad. It allows you to have words, GIFs, videos, and photo all in one experience that can be scrolled down. And really the ultimate thing here is the dwell time is longer. So, you know, people are spending a lot more time with your brand and getting to know you more. And this is great if you have a deeper story to tell, or if you want to really provide like a multi-layered kind of experiential approach. So those are the types of posts, the key ones that I'd like to feature. But again, there's always more coming down the pipe. Facebook is pretty good at launching new bells and whistles. And I recommend staying tuned to them on social or following the hot blogs and write-ups that your favorite marketing sources communicate with, and just seeing what's new, because I think 2017 will continue to see some innovations in this space. So the anatomy of a good post. My checklist is always these three things. Mobile friendly. So knowing that more than 50% of people are now using their mobiles for Facebook, it's very important to have content that is going to look good on a small screen. So that includes things like making sure your video isn't featuring subjects that are too tiny to really see on small screens. If you have any supers or copy on your image or your video, can people read it? Are they watching the video without sound? If so, make sure that it's visually stimulating. So that leads into thumb stopping. So another thing to think about is there is so much clutter in social media, and how do we stand out? Well, we need to do things to really, really drive that interaction and engagement. So it has to be something people would stop and want to actually interact with. And finally, for video, if you're you know, a video consumer like myself, building for the 3-second audition is important. So a video view is counted after the 3-second mark with Facebook video. And so that means you want people to watch at least 3 seconds, but obviously much longer than that. You want their dwell time or their time with you to be as long as possible, so you're getting the most ROI out of it. So that means creating the most important things at the very beginning of the video. Think of it as the inverted pyramid, just like in the newsroom. You start with your most important stuff at the beginning, and then at the very end is the stuff that doesn't matter as much. Really, at the end of the day, people are only watching video content for between 6 and 10, maybe 20 seconds if you're lucky. So even if you have a beautiful 2-minute brand video, chances are people aren't going to get to the end. So you've got to make sure that the good stuff starts at the beginning. So in terms of some of the key things around packaging, so make sure you have short and catchy post copy. You have a strong and clear call to action, speaking back to the think, feel, do. What do you want them to do? And then finally, that multimedia or high impact image to round it out, make it thumb stopping, and make it interesting for people to consume. Your content should be short, snackable, and snappy. If you can check those 3 boxes, then you know you're off to a good start. But that's not all. You want to ask yourself, would I want to share this content? So many times as social media managers and marketers, we get so wrapped up with our programs and so passionate about them, we sometimes forget the end user. And it's always important to stop and ask ourselves, would I share this? And if the answer is no, then you have a bit of a problem, and you want to dissect why you wouldn't share it. Is it the image? Is the image not good? Is the post copy not that interesting? Is the subject not that interesting? And if any of those sort of 3 questions around image, post copy, and subject can't be answered, it's time to go back to the drawing board and rethink your content, because you want to make sure you're happy with it before it goes out to your customers. So we've got our content packaged up and ready for delivery. Now let's talk about the distribution checklist. So here's some key things that you want to start thinking through. Targeting. Who are we trying to reach? Going back to the audience is really the ultimate thing. Who are we reaching, and who would think this content matters the most? We want to make sure that it's going to resonate with the right audience. The timing. So is there any timing that we need to think about? Do we have a certain segment of our Facebook page that tends to engage more at 8 a.m. in the morning? Are they sort of the pre-work commuter crowd who are looking for an escape on the train ride in? Is it the lunch break group that's sort of taking a bit of a break from work, or the after hours crew who are watching the news and engaging on social media at the same time? So think through timing. Also think through your amplification budget. So as I mentioned, you've got to pay to play, and you've ultimately, you put all this time into your content. You want to make sure it's going to get out to the right people. Quality of content and creative is super important, and I think we've covered our base there as far as how to package it up, but it's no longer really a landscape where we can just slap something together and put it out there. We really have to be thoughtful and have an intention with our content and really up that production value, because people's expectations are pretty high these days. Real-time analysis is important, so we want to make sure we're thinking in real time. So once it goes live, how is it performing? What are the tweaks we need to make? And finally, community engagement. And so, we can put things out into the world, and it might spark a conversation for the good or the bad. Are people asking questions about a product? Are they having negative feedback about an experience they had with their brand? All these things really matter, and we want to show, if it's a question about your product, that's a sales lead that's on, you don't want to leave that on the table. You want to make sure you take that, answer questions, send them links, send them everything they need so they could potentially be a purchaser. And then if it's negative, we want to make sure that we're showing that we're here, we're not perfect, but we're listening, and this is how we're going to solve your problem. So context is really important. We all know content is king. They've been saying that for like a decade now. So content is super important, but context is how it's delivered and consumed, and that's equally as important. And ultimately, the marriage of those two things is going to create your desired outcome or your resonance. So things to think through, like the who, what, where, and most importantly, why. Why is my company sharing this content? Does it make sense for me to communicate about the Oscars when I am trying to message, tuning out of social media and being out in the great outdoors and being out with your loved ones in nature? So you just have to think things through on that front and make sure that what you're putting out there in social really ladders back and resonates with your core sort of brand. So we've got a great content plan. We've also got a distribution plan. Now, how do we measure success? Because oftentimes, and I've been in this cycle myself, is you're just go, getting stuff out the door, and then you stop and think, oh, how am I going to actually measure this? I don't know what good looks like. So getting into the routine of building a little scorecard for yourself really, really helps. And it doesn't have to be super robust. I am going to go through, some pretty more in-depth strategies around measurement, but it doesn't have to be that in-depth. It's just about knowing what you want to achieve and how you're going to measure it. So set your target. What are your key performance indicators? What does good look like for you and your business? And how does this tie back into your bigger business objectives? What's your prioritization? So oftentimes there are multiple things that we want to achieve, but ultimately, in particular with Facebook, we can only optimize a certain way. We can only generate web clicks if we have the right Facebook format and the right messaging. We can't necessarily get engagement or positive sentiment or other things if we use a certain type of post. So you can have a lot of different things you want to measure, but only really one thing can be your priority. The rest can be more secondary measurements that help support the story or the narrative around your measurements, but they can't be the best or the top one. And then finally, how will you measure? So it's important to implement, all the key things, and the recipe for success is, if you want to measure your sales, is there someone on your team you have to reach out to get those sales numbers? Is there, special tracking you need to add to your campaign in order to track e-commerce or, other performance metrics? So just think those things through and give yourself that plan ahead of time. So building a measurement scorecard. Build your benchmarks before you launch so you can measure what good looks like. So it seems a little bit complex, but ultimately you can break it down pretty easily. There's a consumer journey from, when they don't know about your brand to when they purchase to when they advocate. But there's sort of 3 key stages in that are the most important, and you can kind of translate them into Facebook metrics that matter. First is awareness. So do they know about you? Do they know what you stand for? All of those kinds of things. And really that can be distilled into post reach. How many people are you reaching to get eyeballs? They may not engage with you, but that 1-second impression or that kind of quick hit of messaging is going to build up over time if they continue to see multiple touch points from you both in social media as well as other marketing mediums. Over time, that builds a story in their head. So post reach is the easiest and probably the cheapest way to measure. There is a brand lift survey that is a little bit more expensive if there's thresholds that you have to meet in terms of budget spend, but Facebook is going to create some self-serve options for that. And ultimately what you can do with that is you can take a control and expose group. The control group does not see your ad, the exposed group sees your ad, and both groups are served a survey with 2 to 3 questions that help answer what you're trying to measure. And then you can see what the lift is from those who saw the ad, from those who didn't. And you can actually start to build a business case for awareness or consideration or conversion. So that's awareness. Consideration is the next piece of the story. So that's really about people actually considering signing up, becoming a customer, really continuing their journey with you. And you can look at things like engagement or video views, social interactions, website referrals, and again, the brand lift survey is another way to measure consideration. And some of these metrics can be available in Facebook Analytics, and some you might need to talk to your website administrator to be able to get things like the web referrals. And finally, you have conversion. So that's actually hard and fast conversions or sales. So is it an email sign up? Is it an online purchase of some kind? And those things are, again, a combination of Facebook Analytics and Site Analytics. So these are the 3 key areas or territories that I recommend you start with when it comes to building your measurement. You can set some broad targets out of this, and then over time, you can start to refine and hone your estimate. So, if you want to reach 1 million people in terms of awareness, you can, spend a certain amount of money and execute a certain campaign, and then you can see, did that work? What do I need to do differently to make it work next time? So measurement tips. Always recommend creating tracking links for your web traffic. A lot of web platforms use Google Analytics or Omniture to track, and there's easy ways to build code to allow you to sort of attribute campaign traffic. Especially since with website analytics platforms, they can measure Facebook. They just list it as Facebook. But what you don't know is whether that Facebook referral came from your campaign or if it just came from someone who is randomly sharing. So you do want to make sure you can create that attribution to the actions you're taking to the website behavior and traffic. Check in early and often. You generally will know pretty quickly on Facebook how things are going to perform. It doesn't take 1 million reach to be able to see how engagement is going to do or video views. You'll know within the first sort of half day if things are going okay and according to plan. And if they're not, you can make changes. You don't just have to leave it and sort of be helpless. You can tweak your creative, you can tweak your advertising targeting or your budget, your bids, etc., to be able to make those sort of customizations. That will allow you to have the optimization and the ability to make your own destiny. Also, you want to know how often you want your reporting. Does it need to be daily if it's a short campaign, or weekly, or monthly, or quarterly, or annually? My suggestion to start off with is a monthly report, but you do want to look in sort of on a weekly basis, more ad hoc, just to see how things are doing. You don't want to leave it too long before you know how things are going, because that allows you to, make those changes that you need to. And ultimately, you want to turn those insights into action. Decide whether you want to kill, change, or grow your campaign. You're not, helpless in this. You can certainly, make decisions. You're not stuck to your content plan. If there's things that aren't working, you can change them. You can remove the content series you thought would do well but isn't. You can refine it. You can try new things. Fail fast and keep going. So finally, I just wanted to do a quick introduction to Facebook advertising. There's a lot of different components that go into advertising, so I'll give you the Coles notes. Timing is super important because it really does impact a few things. Performance is one, and budgets is another. In fact, timing and budgets are kind of dependent on one another. So sometimes your timing will depend on your budget and vice versa. Ultimately, Facebook will take your money no matter what, but it does set limits. If you have a really small budget of, say, $25 to put behind a post, you don't want to be putting that out for a month. That's probably more like a day of advertising. If you have $1,000, you might be able to stretch that behind one post for an entire, couple weeks or something, or look at how you can split out that budget to support a variety of different pieces of content. So definitely know your budgets or what you have to work within and your timing, because that's super important. Again, you want to know your post objective, because you can optimize your campaign and your media to achieve video views, web clicks, engagement, conversion, etc. You also want to know your ad format, and that's ultimately determined by your post objective. You want to know your buy type. So there's different ways to purchase your media. You can choose between an auction, which is essentially the best bidder wins the auction based on these targets that you set. And sometimes you may not serve. If you've set a bid and the bid average is higher than what you said you would pay, you won't serve. That doesn't happen often in Facebook, but it is something to think about. And then fixed rate. So you can purchase a certain amount of reach and frequency for a certain amount of money, but the risk is that you might actually be spending more than if you went through the auction. My recommendation on buy type is to start with your auction, test it out, see how it goes, and then, maybe for like sort of a second stage of that, try a fixed rate purchase and see how that goes. Targeting, again, is very important to understand who you're targeting and what makes them tick. And then finally, placement. So there are 3 different ways to target. So one is the Facebook platform. 2 is the Facebook audience network, which is basically the affiliate websites. So you've probably seen this when you've been looking at sites within the Facebook ecosystem. You'll see a Facebook ad on the website. The thing to think about with that is that you may want to set some parameters around which types of sites you want to be featured on, so you don't appear in something that's too off-brand. And then finally, Instagram. So don't forget that Facebook purchased Instagram just about a year and a bit ago, and there is an opportunity to target Instagram as well. It's a great way to increase your reach, but you do have to be very careful with what content you're promoting, because it is very visually dominant, and you need to have a really good photo or creative to go with your ad. And one other thing to note about Instagram is that it's not always the best approach for those who want to achieve a conversion. In my experience, it's a much either more costly conversion or just less clicks and conversions happen. It's much stronger as an awareness or sort of earlier stage of the customer journey. So let's talk a little bit about customer segments, and you can really slice and dice this any way you want. These are just some examples. So you want to talk about interests is one way. So, what kind of interests or personal activities does this person engage in? Are they an outdoor type? If so, add in a whole bunch of interests that focus on that. Are they health and wellness or fitness? Are they more interested in home and garden or food and beverage? Life stages, as mentioned before, there's a lot of great demographic information around that side of things. And then also things like age or gender are also easy ways to slice and dice your audience. Customers and non-customers is an interesting one. So what you can actually do is take your customer email list, match it against a Facebook audience profile, and then you can see how many people have that email address, are also connected into Facebook. And then you can advertise to those people specifically. And then alternately, you can exclude the same group of people from seeing certain information. So you're going to pay a little bit more to reach those people, but ultimately you might get better or pretty decent ROI because they're further into the journey with your brand. You can target fans and non-fans. So that's important if there's content that really is most resonant with people that already know who you are. If you're targeting non-fans, you just have to think through that a little bit more about, if they're not familiar with you, you might have to talk to them a little bit differently. And then geolocation, of course, is another important one because you might have segments in specific geolocations in the world. So when it comes to targeting, there's a couple things to think about. You can really need to find the balance between being very specific and very broad. Oftentimes, if we're very specific and niche, we're limiting ourselves to a very small audience. And so low reach with potential for little or no interaction. And that really depends. It depends on the sort of nicheness of your customer segment. That's something to think about. Mid-range is, of course, sort of the sweet spot where you'll have a medium amount of reach that you could reach, and then also, potential for most optimum in performance. And then there's the very broad. So you run that risk of basically not appealing to anyone because you're trying to reach everybody and your message is too broad and too non-specific. So oftentimes, if you do go niche, you can create a segment that's very niche and one that's maybe mid-range, just to complement and test against one another. You probably don't ever want to just have a very niche market because you're not going to get the most out of your money. So when you're updating your Facebook advertising campaign, you'll see this same odometer and it will sort of swivel back and forth depending on all of these sort of customer segments that you start to layer in and target. So definitely keep that in mind. Keep your eyes on the potential reach when you set your ad campaign up. So how much do I spend? Ultimately, the easy answer is Facebook will spend your money. It doesn't matter how much it is, they'll spend it. And so you need to do some testing and check out for yourself what the best threshold is. I would say don't spend less than $25 on an ad. It's almost not worth your time and resources to set it up. But you could definitely start with a little tiny bit or, jump in with both feet and try something a little bit bigger. But the way I would look at it is production value and importance of content. So going back to our content plan, is it a piece of content that's a big rock? Is it a campaign or seasonal or even an evergreen? How much value is it to our business in terms of importance, and how much did it cost us to build? If it's a really expensive brand video, we want to put probably a good 40 to 50% in terms of media dollars behind it as what we paid to build it. Campaign targets. So what do you actually need to achieve? Do I need to get 1,000 people to my website? If so, if I'm at a 10-cent cost per click, that's going to cost a certain amount of money for me to get to that target. If I don't have that money, I might need to rethink my campaign targets. Estimated reach. So again, that's similar to targets in that, it's going to cost X amount to reach X number of people. And so you have to think about that. And then finally, historical performance. So how has stuff performed in the past, and use that to sort of guide your decisions going forward. So campaign structures, really Facebook has done a lot of interesting things around Facebook advertising in the last little bit, making it easier to create custom campaigns. The structure is you start with your campaign. So what's the campaign title and overall architecture? What is my objective that I need to achieve for my campaign? So website traffic could be one. Your ad sets are basically, each has a unique budget associated with it and a unique targeting and placement option. So you can say ad set 1 is going to be moms, and ad set 2 is going to be double income, no kids. And then your creative, your ads, feed into each ad set so you can cater them. You can test creative against one another. So maybe the mom, in the advertising category, we might have 2 ads. One is targeted to health and fitness mom, and the other is targeted to maybe an outdoor lifestyle adventure mom. And let's optimize to see which one's going to do better. And Facebook does that automatically for you. Ad set 2, the double income, no kids, maybe we'll have an urban image with something that's more sort of city focused and a rural image. And let's see which one performs against the other. So having multiple ad sets gives you the chance to target different people with different creative, creating that one-to-one marketing communication approach. So let's lift up the hood and take you through a couple key features. So this is what the setup screens look like for advertising. You can see on the left, the campaign is ultimately just the objective. And you can see here on the right-hand side, those are basically your 3 buckets to choose from. And you can choose awareness. There's a few options there. Consideration has the most. And conversion, again, is just a couple options. Your ad sets allow you to indicate your audience, your placements, your budget, your schedule, and then finally the creative. And here's some more screens that just show the level of customization that you can do. You can add your custom audiences, which is your customer list. You can add your location, your age, your gender, language, budget, schedule, optimization for ad delivery, so link clicks is an example there. So lots and lots of things. The best thing to do is get in there, get your feet wet, and start playing with your targeting. One important thing to remember is you don't need to set it and forget it. You launch, you analyze, you optimize, you test, and you learn. If your ad is not doing well for some reason or not achieving your objective, look at the creative, look at the targeting, and make those tweaks. And for those of you who are really just getting new into advertising, some lingo for you. Click-through rate is CTR, cost per click is CPC. The cost per 1,000 is the CPM, and so that's essentially like a $2 per 1,000, so a great metric for reach. Cost per view is CPV, and cost per action is CPA, and that's really focused on the conversion. So if you generated a certain amount of people to your e-commerce site that purchased, then your cost per action is the number of basically of how much it costs to get people there. And finally, I just want to take everyone through a bit of a recap on what we've learned today. So first and foremost, align your content strategy with your business goals. Secondly, know what you want your audience to think, feel, and do. Thirdly, understand your content objectives. Know what you want to measure and how. Next, build an amplification budget that's right for you. And finally, don't set it and forget it. You can always learn and evolve. I want to thank you so much for listening to the webinar. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions or wanted to learn more about Facebook marketing, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at @AmberTurno or email me at info@substratestudios.ca. Thanks so much, and I hope you tune in next time for the next webinar in the Seekers Media webinar series. Have a great day.